Hello everybody,
and welcome to Real World Science.
Today we are discussing why some of you can digest dairy products perfectly fine and why others of you will avoid dairy at all costs on a date in fear of producing a gaseous disaster.
No fear if you're the rootin' tootin' people that are lactose intolerant. You have nothing wrong, I swear, it's all based in genetics. In fact, lactose intolerance used to be the norm.
Lactase persistence was a gene that came about as a random occurrence because that is, actually, how all new genes are introduced. This random creation of new genes is called a mutation. A mutation is where there is an error in DNA replication, meaning the genetic code was not copied properly before the cell divided. If the offspring gets the gamete with the mutated gene, then it will have a gene that has never existed before.
Usually, mutations are not good. They cause diseases and problems, producing essential protein for the body. However, every once in a while, a mutation will give that particular organism a selective advantage, meaning that they will have attributes that give an advantage at survival over the rest of the organism population. This is exactly what happened with lactase persistence.
This mutation gave people with it a selective advantage in populations that practiced pastoralism. When there were famines in this population, the people with access to more food were better able to survive. The people with lactase persistence had a new type of food group that they could eat and digest that the lactose intolerant people did not have.
This allowed more people with lactase persistence to survive compared to lactose intolerant people. This gene, therefore, was more likely passed on to the next generation.
The advantage of lactose tolerance is conditional, however. The only way one trait will have an advantage over another is when there are environmental pressures on a population.
For example, if a population of people are not pastoral, then lactase persistence genes get them no selective advantage over the lactose intolerance gene. If during a frame when there is no source of dairy, the ability to digest dairy wouldn't help you at all, you all are just likely to survive as the rest of the population.
Right now, we want you guys to ask us any questions you want about the science behind lactose intolerance. Just go on Twitter and submit a question ending with #GenesCulture.
Alright, let's see what we got. The first question is, how does one become lactose intolerant when they started off drinking milk as a baby?
We have to look into the epigenetics of DNA to fully explain this. Epigenetics is the physical structure of the DNA regulating what genes are expressed. DNA is wrapped around these things called histones. These histones will, depending on epigenetic factors present, spread apart so DNA can be transcribed in the DNA between the histones, or they will tighten up, limiting access to some DNA and even whole genes.
In reality, all people have a lactose tolerance gene. For lactose intolerant people, however, this gene gets hidden behind the histones after infancy, causing DNA that produces the enzyme that digests dairy, lactase, not to be expressed. On the other hand, as part of the lactase persistence gene, the DNA code does not allow the histones to cover up the gene after infancy, allowing that person to digest milk to their whole lives. So the basic short answer to this is the gene gets turned off after infancy to people that are lactose intolerant.
Here's another question. How long has lactose intolerance been around?
This is what we were really trying to explain earlier. Lactose intolerance has been present since the beginning of humanity. This is not until recently that lactase persistence has entered in the gene pool.
By recent, we mean about 10,000 years. It is estimated at about that time due to the beginning of pastoralism at about that time. Pastoralism gave lactase-persistent people a selective advantage, and that's why the trait became more prevalent in some areas of the world.
Another person asks, how long does it take to develop lactose intolerance?
Well, it is not exactly developed. The coding of lactose intolerance is already in a person's DNA.
However, the lactose tolerance gene is turned off by the lactose intolerance gene after what is known as the suckling period in an animal's life, which is about the first 6 months when it's born. The gene probably gave a selected advantage to the babies that could digest their mother's milk. It is nutritious, easy to consume food for babies. However, before pastoralism, it provided no advantage in being expressed past that time period where the normal diet of the juvenile and adult humans did not include lactose-based foods, so it wouldn't have helped them survive. The lactose intolerance gene is simply a regulatory gene for lactose tolerance, meaning it determines whether the lactose tolerance gene will code for the lactase to break down lactase or not.
The last question we have time for today is the rate of lactose intolerance higher in kids or adults?
Since the lactose intolerance gene kicks in after infancy, all kids that have a lactose intolerance will have a lactose intolerance as an adult, and all adults that have a lactose intolerance has it as kids. So the percent of kids that have lactose intolerance is the same as adults.
However, if we were comparing adults to newborns, the adults would have a higher percentage because all newborns are lactose tolerant and not all adults are.
Well, that's all the time we have for today, folks.
Thank you, and see you next time on
Real World Science.